Going live.
Okay.
And we're live. Live from Montreal. It's Anime Deco. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Anis. Joining me is Dan Arsenault, the creator of Retro Expo Montreal. Dan, thanks for joining me tonight.
No problem. Great to be here.
Hey, that's some really cool stuff you have in the backdrop there. Like, is that your whole collection of figures and collectibles?
I wish I could say it's my whole collection. It's just one room of my whole collection. This is the Transformer floor, I guess we'll call it, which is just
holy moly.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's just wall-to-wall Transformer toys. Probably about, last I counted, about 9,000 Transformer toys.
9,000.
And then on my other floors in my house, I have a video game room, and then I have a manga anime room, which is a whole bunch of stuff I have there, which is a miscellany of all kinds of stuff and 90s toys. My house is crazy. It's a museum.
That's so
Again,
cool.
I run Retro Expo for a reason, because it's a love of that stuff. It's not just a money-making endeavor for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes from a passion and maybe a little bit of an obsession, huh, Dan?
Oh, totally an obsession. A sickly obsession.
I love it. That is so cool, man. I thought Nick was bad, but you're on a whole other level, man.
In Montreal, like there's probably there's a few guys I could name that are probably like the top of their game when it comes, like there's a guy named Arsenault who's at a lot of the conventions. He's like the He-Man guy, not even just in Montreal, but like globally. And same thing, there's a guy, Camise Clark, who's a YouTube also personality in Montreal. He's like the Marvel DC guy. Like we kind of have our own little circle of stuff. And me, I'm just the Transformer guy, but also just everything else.
Yeah. Exactly. That's actually really fascinating. So you're basically like your number one go-to franchise, I guess you could say, would be Transformers.
Transformers would definitely be number one, and then after that, I really like to dabble in video games and video game merchandising, specifically video game merchandising. Like I love just action figures and merch based off of video game franchises, like Mario figures and Mega Man figures. My name, Proto Man, stems from Mega Man.
Yeah. So. Is it true, the rumor that there's a there's a Transformers character named after you or modeled after you?
There is there's a few weird things with that. One of my favorite characters in Transformers is Hot Rod. He was from the original 1986 movie, and he actually is going to be in the new Michael Bay movie coming up too. One of the characters that is Hot Rod in the animated series of 2008, some of his designs were based off of me as kind of a throwback. And when you've been this close to that brand all those years, and I've had the opportunity to write bios for a lot of the toys and stuff. Like I'm a very privileged fan, let's put it this way, in the fandom. And you get these little nods here and there and cool stuff like that. And when you have friends that also work on a lot of the fiction, they'll always throw you a bone somewhere. So it's kind of cool.
Absolutely. That's actually really, really interesting. So you're friends with some of the writers of the comic book series.
Artists, writers, colorists, like creators, designers. When you've been in this long, and I go to I run conventions in Montreal, but I travel all over North America for BotCons, SDCC, New York Comic Con. I try to go to many conventions as possible, and when you go to those shows, you networking and rub a few elbows with people and meet people and stuff. So, and one thing leads to another, and
That's really, really cool. Actually, your last Retro Expo was really important for the Gundam community in Montreal. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's actually thanks to Retro Expo that people came to know that there are Gundam builders in Montreal. A lot of people didn't even know that, who were outside the sort of anime and manga universe. They didn't really know that, people here, build these kind of things. So it's actually really cool that you gave us that chance, and personally, I really appreciated being there. So thanks again.
Well, I've always had a huge connection to Gundam because I got into that franchise accidentally, actually.
Really?
In the mid to late 90s. there was a store, and it still exists here in Montreal, Sci-Fi Anime, way back in the day when it was on Monkland Street, for like the 2 viewers that know what the hell we're talking about. Way back in the day, I was very good friends with the owner there, and he had a whole bunch of model kits, and I came across the Gundam Wing Epignon, and this was, I'd have to say, 1996. This was way before Gundam Wing came to America, and the Epignon, it transformed. And I was fascinated by, oh my God, it's a model kit, it's a robot that transforms. Again, going to my Transformers love. And just, you know, Gundam, if you look at the head designs, very Optimus Prime in origin, although it's the other way around. Optimus Prime is actually a ripoff of Gundam. But it's actually the other way around. But, you know, again, my ignorance back then. And so I fell heavily into Gundam during the late 90s. And then, of course, when it became mainstream in the early 2000s. And so I've always had a huge love for it, and I have a ton of Gundam model kits. Like I'm a big GM and Goof fan personally. I like UC Century stuff. You have a nice Masterpiece box, right? The Masterpiece, Master Grade box right behind you there.
Yep, that's right. That's a Zaku. That's a Zaku Cannon 2.0, I think.
Okay, it's hard to make out there. But anyways. Like it's so and because of that, because I've had a close connection also to just the Montreal fandom of Gundam and stuff, I always offer you guys free tables to just show off your works, because the one thing that I can't do is I'm not a good dry brusher. I'm not a good painter. Like and Lou, who's the owner of Sci-Fi Anime, shout out to him. He's a very talented guy, so I used to always be super envious of those guys that could do that. And
he's exceptionally talented.
Oh, he's
taught me a lot, like what the kind of model that I've been working on. You know, initially I thought that I would just, you know, I thought what was cool about Gundam is that, you know, these are model kits that come pre-cast in colors, and you don't technically need to do any painting or
Thank God
any
for
kind
me. That's how I built all of mine. I was very fortunate to have, you know, molded in color and stickers, you know, because of my lack of talent or whatever they call it, the water transfers, you know. So I was, I was.
I mean, even with that, even with just snap building and decals, you can get it to look really, really cool. And, you know, you have a wonderful, like, art object that you can enjoy, and even a great gift if you want to give it to a friend or something like that. So
I appreciate it more because when you're building it, I appreciate the engineering behind it, especially when you do stuff of a master grade or perfect grade, where you start really building internals and skeletons and stuff. And again, that leads back again to Transformers, where I have this huge love of just the engineering of how one thing turns from another. And Gundam has a lot of transforming stuff now more than ever. I mean, it started in Zeta, but I mean, it's even more predominant now in the franchise. But yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. The whole transformation thing. Well, actually, there's not so much in terms of transformation in the latest Gundam series. In Iron
now it's a
Blooded
lot more.
Orphans.
It's a lot more mid UC Century stuff we're getting now. We're getting a lot of throwback stuff. But I mean, like when we were kind of knee deep in Seed, and when we had you know, like, well, we'll say like the mid 2000s to late 2010s, we had a lot of that though.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, that's true. There was the transforming was like a big. It was a big sort of trope, and like it's awesome. What's not awesome about a robot that can transform into different forms? It's just the coolest thing ever.
It's a whole room dedicated to it around me. So
exactly. Yeah. So like you must not move very often, huh?
Well, that's just it. Like up until about 6 years ago, I lived with my parents, and my father was a toy collector. So between my collection and his, we were kind of getting at a point where space was becoming an issue in the house. And when you're talking about a guy who kind of had a good 30-year advantage over me, you know, he kind of already had his stuff established. I mean, when I was born into this world, I was always used to having a father that had a record, like a vinyl record, you know, like the old music vinyl records. Like he had a whole room just dedicated to that, and then die-cast cars. So I grew up in that environment where it was just like you had your toys and they were displayed on the shelf, and these are daddy's toys. You have your toys, and then you have daddy's toys. You don't touch daddy's toys.
Daddy's toys.
So it was so fascinating, and I mean it kind of like I was one of those few kids that even though I was very social, I did sports and stuff, I was never encouraged by my parents to sell your toys. You know, I had a dad that like I remember, I'll never forget, like I got an old Spider-Man toy, God, like in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just remember, I have this vivid memory of my father taking a kitchen knife and cutting the bubble off of the toy perfectly and saying, keep the card back, it'll be worth money one day. And this is like the 80s, you know what I mean? And it's just like, my father was that kind of dad, you know? So
Okay.
I was raised, and well, he's also a guy too, that his own toys growing up, he still has all the boxes. And that was more that was more something because when he was growing up, he had a lot of brothers and sisters. So his logic was, oh, if I keep it in the box, it's protected from them. And to this day, he still has, like, he collects, for the old people that might be watching this, he collects Dinkies and Corgis, which are kind of like our equivalency of Hot Wheels. You know,
Dinky cars.
So like he has tons of those. Like and like same thing, even like my displays, they have these lights and glass cases and stuff. Totally because of my dad. Because growing up, lights and glass cases, like I lived in a museum.
That's fantastic. That's
growing
fantastic.
up, it was like I was just like, you know, and we had animals. We had dogs and cats, so like, you know, dust is an issue.
Yeah, sure.
So my dad, like, you know, we just had glass cases just to keep the dust away from. It doesn't do a perfect job, but it does the job relatively. So you know, it was a weird environment growing up, and it got to a point I felt that it was when those Michael Bay Transformer movies came out, and then just so much product was coming out that I started realizing I was buying product and not being able to open it because I just didn't have the space for it. So it was just better to keep it in the package. Before I knew it, it was just boxes and boxes of unopened product. And I'm like, you know what? It's time to buy a house. You know, I have the money. You know, what am I doing? You know, so I searched around, found this nice, beautiful house in the West Island. That's a 12 and a half. I remember when I was buying the houses, I went straight to the basement. I like every open house, I just went straight to the basement. I didn't even care if the kitchen was redone or anything. I'm just like, I need to see the basement. I need to see, like, and I would just visualize it in my mind. All right, that's going to go there. That's going to go there. And the rest is history.
Awesome. That's really cool. So this is a man who has his priorities in order.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. To a degree.
That is so cool. That's fantastic. I love how it's not like, you know, seeing this girl and then one thing led to another, and since we've got married,
geez,
look, really when it comes to a house.
When it comes to dating, like that's priority one with me. You know, I always say that. I've always said to guys, like, a girl won't judge you with what's in your basement as long as it's not a dead body. You know what I mean? So
and why should she? If anything, I've recently been you know, so I'm single, and I've been like contacting a bunch of women, mostly online. You know how it is these days.
Well,
and like every time I mention that, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm working on a Gundam. They're like, whoa, you actually build stuff? Like,
you know what? Now
that's so cool.
Now it's fine. Now the thing is that we wouldn't have been having this conversation like pre-2007, but ever since Big Bang Theory and then Marvel movies, everything got so mainstream and geek became chic that now this is cool.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, this kind of stuff is cool right now. So, you know, where like I remember like back in the day, it was almost like, here we go. This is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Bring the girlfriend down to the room, and it's just like, this is your little brother's room, right? Nope. This is my room. You know, like, so it was always like, now it's not an issue. Like it's so different. Now it's cool, this kind of stuff, but
you're right. Now it's almost like it's almost like a status thing almost. Like if you're a nerd, you're definitely gonna have an easier time picking up women because you'll have something interesting to talk about, and you're not like every other 100 guys she's ever had a conversation with. Like
when a girl knows who Iron Man is in 2016, where literally no girl knew who Iron Man was in 10 years ago. Well, maybe not 10 years ago. I'd say like
15 years ago.
Before that first Robert Downey Jr. movie. Like, let alone women, just most geeks in general, Iron Man was so low on the totem pole of importance.
Sure.
You know, that like it really shows. I mean, I always joke like, man, I would have never thought that Loki would be a sex symbol, today. Like, but yet here we go. Where it's just like, really, like the guy had the face of the Joker with blonde hair and horns in the comics, and here he's a sex symbol now because of Tom Hiddleston. So, and same thing with Arrow. Like it just things are so different now. Now it's so easy now to come out of your variable geek closet and always. I was very lucky because I was someone who, while I was a huge toy collector, I never shed away being a social individual. I was a big jock in high school. I did a lot of sports. I did a lot of hockey. And
oh, really?
yeah,
Cool.
well, that's just it. So, and I always dressed good. You know, I wasn't your atypical geek, but I came home to a toy collecting family. So
Nice.
it was never, it was like, you know, you could be like, if your dad is like a judo master, you know, you come home to it, you can never escape that. You know what I mean? He'll always be like, you got to get in the dojo, you know? So it was kind of the same thing. It's just like you come home and your dad's like, look at this new Batmobile toy I just bought. You know, it's like you couldn't
That's so
escape it.
cool.
So,
Yeah.
and again, when I discovered the internet, like I was very lucky to have the internet back in 96, 97. Some of the first things that I looked up was just, hey, what's happening with Transformers right now? You know, what's happening? Because what else did you look for on the internet aside for porn back in 1996? You know, so. Like it's just there, especially when you're 13. You know, there's not like really wasn't much that you could look for back. And today it's different. Now you have Facebook and all kinds of social media.
Oh, yeah.
Back then you had websites that had porn and websites that talked about geeky shit. There really wasn't much in between back then. You know,
that's true. That's
true.
true.
A different time. It was the Wild West.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember a time when basically bandwidth was so low on the internet, you couldn't really stream video, and you couldn't really like. I mean, there was no concept of like downloading TV shows.
Oh,
you know,
no,
like
of course not. The concept, like that was like again for anyone who's over 25, Napster came around and kind of changed the game when it came to downloading music. And then Morpheus, which came after Napster, was the first ever file downloading program. And when that came around, then it was like, oh, you could kind of share episodes with each other. And we're talking the most low quality, real player, RM format crap episodes ever with like you can't even read the subtitles. You know, like but that was the early days of the internet, and I was very fortunate to be around during that, just because, you know, I was lucky to have, you know, a toy collector father where technology was kind of important in the hobby. So,
yeah, it's interesting actually that nerds always have like we're like the early adopters for pretty much a whole lot of different kinds of technologies, and as a result, in the information culture, like we're usually the first to find out about many things, you know.
Everything.
Yeah, pretty much everything.
I'll never forget. I went on a double date with someone, and we went to go see Amazing Spider-Man. And obviously, the other couple that we were with were not people that were in the know. Let's put it that way. Okay. And when we left the theater, the boyfriend of the other couple was like, "Man, I can't believe Gwen Stacy died." And I was like, yeah, welcome to 1973, brother. You know, like it was just, but that's just it. Like it's gotten to that point where now, you know, like this kind of stuff is just, you know, it's out there, and we're ahead of the curve by like 60 years in some cases.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what
true.
I mean?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting actually how. I mean, I like how geek culture, nerd culture has become mainstream now, because before it was like, I remember growing up in the 90s thinking that, oh man, everybody out there, like people are missing out on so much awesome stuff. And you know, I mean, it's not really like, who cares, I guess, in a way, because like it's their loss. But now I mean, how many Marvel properties have already become movies, you know, with Disney buying Marvel and everything.
I remember talking with one of the comic book owners in Montreal, a guy named Paul, who used to work at a store called Carsey Comics. And I remember he said, man, we had Rocket Raccoon #1 in our store for like 25 years and no one cared. And we had like 4 copies of that sitting there for like 25 years.
Holy
for like,
moly.
we were asking like $10 for it and no one cared.
Moly.
The second that Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, everyone bum rushed our store. and that's all it takes. That's all it takes. A Rocket Raccoon, this super D-list, low-tier Marvel character, and all of a sudden kids are cosplaying him. There's Rocket Raccoon masks and Toys R Us. That's all it takes. And I mean, it's the same thing. Like if you're someone who's like, I mean, it's kind of like the stock market. If you want to know how to make money, like buying and selling toys, always look what the latest movie is coming out. Like if you're someone who's like, oh man, like what should I buy to resell from toys? It's like, start picking up Thanos stuff now. because like
Sure.
when an Infinity Gauntlet movie rolls around, or Infinity Wars, whatever they want to call it, that's going to be, he's going to be the man,
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. That's interesting. So you're saying that basically, even though it's a high risk market, but at the same time, it's pretty predictable if you follow the franchises and the releases and everything.
I find that Marvel has a very good success rate. DC, it's more hit or miss. Like,
You're
I
right
mean, a
about
lot
that.
of people have a lot of hopes with certain movies, and they usually don't pan out. Suicide Squad, Batman, Superman. I mean, that's your own opinions. I mean, some people might be like, I like that movie, but I
Sure.
find that at least in Marvel movies, a lot of them really do well. Even if they're not great, there's still people who go to see it and get behind it. So
True.
I find that if you're someone who's looking to buy to sell toys, investing in some of those characters before they become really big is a big yes. Like if ever we get another Spider-Man movie where Venom becomes a thing again, pick up those Venom toys, and when that movie comes out, sell them around. Sell them the week the movie comes out. You'd be surprised how running shows, you see that a lot. I see the ups and downs of various popular things. One of the first Retro Expos happened a week after Episode 7, and that weekend, if you didn't have Star Wars stuff at your table, you weren't making money. Even though even the people who I knew who were Transformer fans or DC fans, that weekend they were just Star Wars in their mind. They were just like, I want to pick up a black X-wing. Like Poe's X-wing. Like there was just it happens where people they get a taste of that new hotness and they want to get a little piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really fascinating for me, I'm actually from a Star Wars background too. Like Star Wars is very much my go-to franchise. Like since September or August, I've been really like balls deep into Gundam, and caught up on like half the UC until now, maybe a little bit less. But before that, like I think I've read something like 37 of the Star Wars novels that now we're told is the extended universe. So
Legend or Legacy, whatever they call it now. Legends.
Yeah.
I think they have a special title for that.
A bit of a dick move, Disney, but I guess it was bound to happen. So whatever.
Well, I always felt being a Star Wars fan has always been kind of like, it's always been kind of, even from a merchandising standpoint, it's like, hey, here's all these Power of the Force 3-inch scale stuff. Buy it. Oh, by the way, here's Black Series. See you later. Buy it all again. So I mean, I've always as a Transformer fan, and Star Wars has always been our fellow Hasbro brothers, along with G.I. Joe. I've always looked at Star Wars fans and almost kind of pitied them, where it was just like because I'm a Transformer completist. Like I just buy everything, and I look at Star Wars fans, and I'm just like, my God, like you have to take a second job for this hobby. It must be insane.
Take a second job. Yeah, I'm sure. For the completists, I can't even imagine where to begin.
I can't even imagine they exist. It would be impossible.
Yeah, no, I don't think they do, because it's a really tall order. Like Lucasfilm is a multi-billion-dollar franchise because of merchandising.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much that's where George Lucas made the bulk.
That's where he made all his money. He made
all his money. He knew what was up. So I don't know. I guess I don't really mind, because the way I see it, at least.
Well, not everyone has to be as crazy as me. They could always pick and choose, so they could always go, true. Well, I'm just going to collect R2-D2s, that's just it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just no one should be me. No one should ever have to. That's not the best route to go with any hobby. And not to mention, Transformers is one thing. When you see the rest of my house, you're just like, oh man, all the other toy lines that I also kind of dabble in. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I mean, I guess it's neat, because in the Disney version of the Star Wars universe, there's a whole bunch of new stuff that it's really fresh and it's really interesting. Like the whole story behind the not R2, but what's the new one called? The
BB-8?
ball robot, BB-8. Yeah, did you read about the story about Sphero and that robotics company that started up, and then actually Disney approached them to build BB-8?
Well, I know that in the case of J.J. Abrams, he wanted to go more practical with everything. So yeah. I think that would have started right away with the droids, where they could have easily went with something CG. but they probably wanted to go with something that was physically there. And if it's something physically there, then you need someone that actually had a, robotics or puppetry or something of that manner. So it doesn't surprise me that happened, because I'm pretty sure with the direction he wanted to go in for the whole movie, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting development, because basically Sphero was a startup company, and they just kind of liked robots, and they figured, hey, maybe there's a way to get to make a robot that you can control with your smartphone. And they had developed a ball robot that was rotating around and everything. And so Disney saw this and they thought, hey, this is really cool. Let's contact these guys. Maybe they can make what we want for BB-8. And then overnight, they built BB-8 on a 3D printer, and BB-8 was born overnight.
Well, I'm pretty sure when some of the creators of Star Wars contact you, you're going to pull an all-nighter,
Yeah, exactly. So, but what's really nice about the toys now is that, like, for BB-8, for example, BB-8 is an entirely hackable toy. You can program it to do whatever you want using all its sensors. Even apparently the motherboard can be, like, if you're going to take it apart and, like, build a more fancy BB-8, then you can totally add a bunch of stuff to it, whatever you want. The sky's the limit. It's a really interesting, like, direction. Like, we've never had toys that have been that interactive before.
Well, so I've always said, like to be a kid now, they're so lucky. There's so many times people always say, like, "Oh, our toys were better." No, you're crazy. You're crazy.
They weren't. They weren't.
It's nostalgia speaking. Trust me, their toys are way better.
They're so much better. They're from another dimension.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
we had 3 points of articulation if we were lucky. Like that was about it. Now you got a code on the bottom of the foot of the toy that opens up an app that's on your phone, and then you got a code that also brings you to a website to unlock more content. Trust me, your toys are way better. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of toy is this?
Yeah.
It's almost like it has a life of its own. I remember the first such toy that I had was a Darth Maul from a Darth Maul action figure, and it had this weird, like, stand where you'd put Darth Maul on the stand.
The voice chip activators by episode 1. That was a bomb. Yeah. Oh my god.
It didn't go anywhere, but I was so impressed.
And that was supposed to be revolutionary.
Right here, like, Darth Maul can not only talk, but I just need this one base, and then I can put all the different characters on, and they all, like, they talk and stuff. That's crazy. Like, how do they make money? This must be expensive.
Well, they actually didn't make a lot of money from episode 1, but that's a whole other story. The toy line actually didn't do very well.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. But it's interesting. Like, that's what that episode 1 out of all the movies is what got me into model making. Like, I'm a model builder today because of pod racing, basically. So,
interesting.
Yeah, AMT.
So not all bad came from episode 1, then, I guess.
No, oh, come on. Pod racing is awesome. No one can say otherwise. Pod racing is like the saving grace of Star Wars episode 1. And so they made a really nice, EMT Ertl made a really nice scale model replica of Anakin's pod racer. And I actually have it behind me. That box, that one right there is Anakin's pod racer. And I've had it for like a decade, but I always put it off, like, starting to build it, because I never had the skills necessary. I didn't understand how they even painted these things until I got into Gundam. And then in 1 year, my skill level has, like, skyrocketed just because of Gunpla, because there's just so much information available on the internet. Okay, this is how you paint this is how you do that. You should get an airbrush because, and so, like, I've done all these things, and now I'm at the level where I feel like, okay, I can't wait to start working on this pod racer.
Well, especially also, I've noticed that model kit creating has existed for, God, like almost 100 years now. But I found that, like, it was really Bandai that revolutionized everything, because up to that point, a lot of when you had Monogram and a lot of companies that were mass producing model kits, they were cars, they were jets, they were vehicles, trains.
That's true.
It was never really articulated action figures with multiple joints. And when you even look at the very first Gundam model kits, the 1979 stuff based on the original UC Century stuff, even then, like, the 1x100 scale stuff still had crazy articulation for their time. Like, it's still more so than even an action figure of that time. I'm reminded of some of the 1x100 scale Zaku's and Goofs. I mean, they still had a bicep swivel. They still had a wrist swivel, which show me an action figure from 1979 that had a bicep and a wrist swivel or something, maybe a limited Barbie doll or something, but nothing of at that time. So they were really ahead of the curve, and I credit Bandai for a lot of. I mean, they're the first one that ever said, "Why don't we get the customer to do all the work that normally the company would do?" Like,
it's a genius business model. Actually, it's really clever.
I mean, I've seen how Transformer toys are made. It's literally Gunpla, but it's done in the factory before we get to it. But Bandai was like, hey, how about we just throw all those sprues in a box, give them a couple of stickers, and then just tell them it's Gunpla. You do it yourself. And they right away they cut out the middleman in the factory, and you became the factory worker, but you're paying for the product.
And you're paying to be their product builders. Like, I noticed.
And then you take photos of it, and now you're advertising it. You know,
exactly.
Look what I made! Isn't it cool? What is that? It's Gundam. And it's like, and Bandai's just like, oh yes, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. There they come.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ingenious business model. It's an evil genius kind of thing where they've figured a way to have a self-replicating like infinite revenue stream, and it's quality product. You can't even hate on them. It's quality product. They release a shitload of kits every month. There's new kits. They re-release old stuff. They redo kits that had issues in the past. They're always improving.
That's one thing I will give credit to Bandai is they're very good with the reissuing. Where like to this day, like I'll see kits that I built, sometimes almost 20 years ago, and yet they still get reissued to this day, and you could still pick them up on the shelves, like old, 1997. Where that's almost coming on 20 years now. 1997 Endless Waltz kits of Gundam Wing. And they're still reissuing the 1x100 scale one still to this very day. So nothing changed. Price is more or less the same, if not cheaper. Like it's great. I always, as much as I rag on them, but I love everything about Gunpla and the whole concept of it. And I wish I was more talented at it.
Actually, it's interesting. Just before this stream, I was streaming with a guy called Raheem from Vancouver, and so he's part of a club called Vanpla, and Raheem started one of the popular tutorial channels on YouTube. So this is something really cool, because now in 1 minute you can learn the basics of Gunpla building, which previously you would have to read through walls of text just to get the same level of the same sort of information, and it's just really cool, I think. And it's what I think is that, I don't know, I think model building is really important, because I think that in North America we have sort of lost our manufacturing skills. We've lost our manufacturing base, and maybe if more of the young generation get passionate and get really into the culture of building things together and having fun making things with their hands.
Well, that's something that's a growing epidemic in general. I find as someone who runs conventions, I've noticed that a lot more now. Children don't entertain themselves in a playing with toys kind of way or using their hands. Everything's an iPhone now.
True.
And I'll never forget. It was 2 years ago. I was at a convention in Chicago, and I was just sitting at a booth, and I saw this family pushing a stroller, and the kid in the stroller, which could have been no more than 2 years old, was playing on an iPhone. And it was hilarious because the father handed him the iPhone, but he handed it to him upside down, and he instinctively turned it right side up to the button on the bottom. And I was like, wow, he could be no more than 2 years old, and it's already pre-programmed in him.
He already knows.
But I see that too running conventions, because it's hilarious where I'll run shows, and you'll see the guys who are the dealers, they're in their 40s or they're in their 50s or even in their 20s, and you see they're there setting up everything, the wall of toys. And then you'll have their kid with them who could be no more than 5 years old, 6 years old. And they're kind of sitting on the floor playing Fruit Ninja on their iPad. and they look bored out of their minds.
Bored out of their mind, yeah.
They're just like, oh, my dad with his toys, you know, flick, 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 you know. Like they almost feel like, oh, like they're so disconnected from it. And there's a huge decline, I find, when it comes in interest in toys and stuff. So model kits, I mean, if it even brings back a little bit of interest for kids to just start tangibly doing that kind of stuff, and that kind of stuff and that kind of dexterity is just, it's good for the mind.
I think so.
I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a car mechanic by trade, and I'd like to believe that part of that is, I'm wearing like it right now actually, but I'm wearing one of my jackets. Part of it is, I like to believe, is because of Transformers. I like to feel that it was a domino effect that led to that. I mean, I don't think it's directly that, but I like to believe that, you know, growing up, messing with Transformer toys, seeing how the engineering works there. And again, the model kits too, even the model kits with Gundam, I really like tinkering with stuff, and that led to that. And it's a lucrative job, you know, where, I mean, I hope every kid doesn't grow up hoping to be a Vine star or something, or a YouTube star, because that's,
I know.
That seems like that's the only thing they seem to value now. And I feel like I'm going on an old man rant, but it's like that's kind of what I'm seeing in the evolution of conventions now, is that there's less of an interest in tangible goods and more of an interest in devices and products and gadgets.
Yeah, actually, that's actually pretty interesting. I mean, I think certainly there's a certain element of that's become the new obsession for kids. If it doesn't have like bright flashing lights on it, you've already lost them, because like how are you going to compete with like a Retina display that like is flashing in your face? It's basically like an LED signboard that you can carry with you at all times. How do you compete with that?
And especially it's a two thing too, is like the one thing that blows my mind is we have something in our back pocket that's literally the knowledge of the universe.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, like when we were kids, we had to look at Encyclopedia Britannica, which weighed like 2,000 tons and costed $1,000 for your mom to buy, and it had maybe 10% of the knowledge of the universe in it. You know? maybe. If you're lucky.
Absolutely.
So now we have like literally in our back pocket the knowledge of the entire universe, but we use it to watch cat videos and Pootie Pies. So it's kind of like. You know, that's what kind of kills me. And the other prong thing is I find that a lot of kids today, it's just it's instant gratification. I think that today, and I see that even, this goes back to Transformers. I see that with the Transformer products, where a lot of Transformer toys are pretty complicated, but with the advent of the Michael Bay movies and Transformers really becoming mainstream because of them, they started making Transformer toys that were instant gratification, one-step transform, which didn't exist really before.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They started making Transformer toys for kids that just can't deal with that, you know, that they want it from a car to a robot without any effort, and that within itself is a marketing tier of stuff, which shows that there's a recognition that kids need to have that satisfaction, otherwise companies won't be making product. I mean, it's the same thing as with video games now. It's a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a very interesting. The instant gratification thing is a very interesting. It's a very interesting point, because I was having this conversation about video games, and we were saying very much the same thing. For example, in a lot of video games, like for me, growing up playing, The Legend of Zelda.
Of course.
Ocarina of Time, like one of the most like the cherished memories I have of my childhood is, okay, I have to go to like that place now, but where is it? I don't know. It's a mystery. It's just a point on a map.
Exploration, exactly.
And you explore.
Navi might give you a mild hint to push you in the right direction, but in general, and it's funny actually when you mention even like Ocarina of Time, when they remade that game for the 3DS, they actually put something in the game called I think it was called a hint stone, which was always located in the Temple of Time. Whenever you went to the Temple of Time, there was a stone that you talked to and told you exactly what to do next, and it showed you a video of what to do next. And it was ridiculous. Yeah, and that's just it. And I remember when that was put in there, I'm like, yep, this is the new generation of gamers, where there's no game over screen anymore, and your hand is held through the entire journey.
Through the entire journey, you know?
Well, me as a Mega Man fan, like, it's just, people, like, so many people hate Mega Man games because of their difficulty.
There's no save?
And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, but that's just how it is, like, sometimes you
Yeah.
win sometimes Mega Man is life. Sometimes you just don't succeed. And if you try hard, you might succeed. That's just how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know exactly what you mean, and it's interesting how there's like pretty much there's two camps now where you have I'd done some game testing at one point for a studio in Montreal.
One of the
They're the
many.
guys that did Deus Ex. They're called
Okay, so you're
Eidos.
at Square Enix.
Yeah, exactly. Eidos Montreal, which is now owned by Square Enix, and it's interesting because we were testing a platformer called Sleeping Dogs, and it's a fun game. It's like a sandbox game set in Hong Kong.
Yes. Lost your audio there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I was really excited that here's a game like GTA that's not set somewhere in a familiar place like New York or Los Angeles, and it's an awesome game. It's fantastic. But what's interesting is that so they tested it in a number of international markets wherever they have a studio, right? So they tested it in England, and Japan, and China, in the U.S., and all of these studios where they'd done test groups, people had said this game is kind of hard. But the Montreal test group was like, you know what? Is there a hard mode that we can use? Because this game is too easy.
Well, that's it. And it's funny because it's gotten to that point now where I think that and I always say 2007 was a changing point for a lot of things. That
Yeah,
Transformer movie
that's
came
true.
out, the
Yeah.
iPhone hit the market, Big
Yes,
Bang Theory
exactly.
came out, and the Wii really hit public domain at that point. All of those
That's
things really
true.
happened and the Wii made video games mainstream. Now grandpa's playing a video game.
That's true.
The
Yeah.
iPhone brought the internet, which used to be something you had to sit at a desktop. Now kids are sitting in their bed at 2 a.m. and they have the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
Big
True.
Bang Theory made geek cool, even though I hate that show.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I can't even palate Big Bang Theory.
But Big Bang Theory is not for people that are geeks.
Yeah,
It's made
that's
for
true.
people who are not geeks that are like,
Exactly.
hey, remember
Yeah.
Mario Kart? Laugh
Yeah.
track. Let's install the 4 controllers. Laugh track.
Yeah.
Watch out for my blue shell. Laugh track. Like
It's a show that's made for normies so that they can reminisce on their childhood, and I think that's fine. It's cool. It's popularized what we love. So why are we?
Yeah, it is. Well, I kind of made a business out of it, so
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
It in a way, so, but it's at the same time, it's just like, I felt that all of those kind of things is what contributed to a lot of that, where a whole bunch of people because there was a large group of people that they played video games when they were kids in the 80s. In the 90s, they kind of phased out of that into their teens, into their 20s. Then when it became mainstream, they came back to video games, but now they haven't been playing video games all that time, so they kind of were not ready for what was there. So companies started making the games easier because it got to a point where companies wanted people to play video games, be gratified, and then move on to the next thing. And that's why it's gotten to I almost feel like when I was growing up, it took you forever to beat a video game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it took a lifetime. Like I felt like, when you rented it, like I used to feel like if you rented a game and you had it for 2 days from Blockbuster or even the local video store, there's no way in hell you were going to beat it in those 2 days. But I feel but I almost feel like every single 3+A, like 3-star, 5-star game today, or even stuff that isn't 5-star games today. Yeah, if you have 72 hours, you're going to beat it. You're going to beat it.
Oh, yeah, easily, for sure.
Like with very little challenge, they almost and I don't want to rag on all games because not all games are like that. But the general of it, I mean, even like I could think of like just again referring back to Transformers, like when they did the War for Cybertron game, Fall for Cybertron, they did the Devastation game recently. Those were all games that if you sat down and you dedicated your weekend to it, you were done. You know, like where, I mean, Mario 2,
That's true.
I mean, today, if I played Mario 2, I could beat it in less than 2 hours. But back in the day, you know, again, I'm a trained, you know, 80s gamer, so Mario 2 is a walk in the park for me. But back then, I felt like it was a lifetime before I finally saw a wart, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, you would be retrying every level so many times, and it was frustrating, and you'd
until
be
the
sweating.
GameCube was invented.
Yeah, that's good.
But anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, anime-wise, what did you grow up watching? Curious.
Oh, God. Well, the thing is, when it comes to anime is because my dad was French-Canadian, so if you were raised an Anglophone in Quebec, you didn't really see a lot of anime unless if it was Robotech or very specific dub stuff. But if you were a Francophone, a French person in Quebec, almost everything you grew up with was anime, because a lot of stuff was imported from France. But if I don't count that, like if I don't count that kind of stuff, then technically, like if I don't count Francophone television, my first anime would probably, like legit anime, would probably have to be Samurai Pizza Cats.
Samurai Pizza Cats. Yes,
like if I had to really pinpoint it, like the first time I recognized something as this is Japanese animation, was Samurai Pizza Cats, and then after that, Ronin Warriors, which I think was maybe a year after that and stuff. Discovering, you know, when Street Fighter, the arcade scene exploded in the early 90s, 91, 92, 93. That really opened up the doorway for Japanese anime and the rental scene. And I was lucky because I lived near Côte-de-Neige Plaza, and there was a video store that used to rent like the very early, like when an anime section really consisted of like 2 rows of videos. And it was all by Manga Studios, which was like the one anime company at the time that would import stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, like, I mean, back in the day, like, if you went to a kid section, you had Akira, which it shouldn't even be in there, but
totally not.
But yet it was always there. You had Lensman, you had, which is another obscure like 80s VHS anime before people knew what anime was.
I'm not familiar with Lensman. I'm gonna have to look that up now.
It's another one that's like, you know, if you find VHSs of it and you go, oh, this was like imported in 92, you know, like way before the anime boom, like it's, like there was a lot of that stuff. Same thing with, I'm trying to think, Ultraman is another example, even though it's a live action thing, it also had a lot of that where there was the animation that was brought over here and translated. Speed Racer, another great example. How can I forget Speed Racer? Speed Racer is technically one of the first animes that were brought over here, but my knowledge of Speed Racer more stems from the series that was made in the 90s, which wasn't anime. It was The New Adventures of Speed Racer, and then the 60s one was aired afterwards. Right. It's just that kind of stuff. Anyways, it's just like I'm trying to think, but like my first legit anime, if I want to say, like, you know, I rented it and it was subtitled and stuff like that. I would have to say that would be Tank Police, which was from the creator of Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that.
Okay, you have my full attention. Say what?
he did. I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Masamune Shiro. Someone's gonna be yelling. Someone's yelling at the screen right now. You fucking idiot! You know. But he did an anime OVA series and a manga called Tank Police, which is it's literally like picture like I'm pretty sure you know Pat Labor.
Yeah, Pat Labor.
It's like Pat Labor, but with tanks instead, and it's a dystopian future and stuff like that. So
I'm looking at it now.
It's so, and that was one of the very first animes I ever watched, subtitled, and you know, subtitling, like you get used to it, you know, reading and watching at the same time. And I think I must have been like 12 years old at the time or 11. And I was like, oh shit, cartoons have boobs in them too, because Tank Police have boobs. You know, and then afterwards, then I discovered Ranma 1/2, which was another one. And this is way before discovering Dragon Ball on television and Sailor Moon later. This was like again the early 90s, because I believe Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball were 94 and 95 when YTV started airing them.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
So,
Sounds about right.
but that was like, I mean, those were some of the very first stuff that I watched. Ranma was another very strong one, Ranma One Half, because it was
Yeah,
it was Viz Video and Manga Video, which were the two major distributors of anime back then. And the
that's
only way you
right.
could get them was renting them from video stores. And if you were a fan of anime during the '90s, there was a huge bubble of these video stores popping up. That Sci-Fi Anime was one example of them that I mentioned earlier. There was Black Lotus Cafe that was on Van Horn Street back in the day. There was a lot of these anime rental shops. Now they're all gone today because the rental industry is dead. But back then it was a big deal.
That's true. Yeah, it really was a little boom, and you had all these little local joints that you could find all kinds of weird, obscure stuff, and there was a whole subculture around that. But it's really exciting that now, because it's gone mainstream, the barrier to entry in this foreign kind of world has gone down so much. Like these days, kids can just open up their phone, get on a Crunchyroll, and
totally
discover something fascinating and interesting.
Even if you don't even have Crunchyroll, like just YouTube. The beautiful thing is a lot of I find a lot of English dubs, they kind of fall under that license-free property.
Yeah.
So if an anime has an English dub, it seems like it could be legally uploaded to YouTube without it getting taken down. It seems like only when it's the original subtitled version does it ever get taken down. So you can find a lot of free anime just on YouTube. Like
you're right. Yeah, you're right. There's
whole channels of like OVAs and movies that are dubbed, and if you're willing to deal with dub, because and some people don't like dub. I'm kind of it depends on the source material really, because I find that some dubs do a really good job and some dubs are absolutely terrible. So It really depends, but it's just like there's so much of that. So now it's kids. It's such an easy gateway for them to get into anime and stuff. Where back then you had to go to Chinatown and buy a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy that was
exactly.
like of a VHS that was in the worst quality ever, and the subtitles were like yellow and grainy, recorded in LP format.
Yeah.
But that was the old. The funny thing is the Otaku-thon, which is now the big anime convention here in Montreal, its humble beginnings, if you really track it down, was they used to be called the Otaku Concordia Anime Club back in the 90s.
Yeah, and I was in that club actually when I started at Concordia.
They were a tape trading club, which was you paid $1 and you rented tapes and they just hoped you brought it back. And these and it was special because unlike video stores that were only legally allowed to rent licensed material, this was bootleg stuff that was being shared and traded. So a lot of really rare anime for that time that just never got brought over. A lot of sports animes and stuff like that. That was sometimes the only way you could discover it was through these tape trading programs and stuff. And like I discovered one of my favorite animes of all time, and again, links to why I'm a mechanic a little bit, Initial D.
Initial D is what got me into anime. Honestly, Initial D and Full Metal Alchemist in that order is. I remember when it was only Pokemon, and I was like, I don't get this. This is not my jam. I can't relate to like what the hell is this collectible dinosaur nonsense. I don't understand this. And then a friend of mine, in college said, hey, but if you're into cars, how come you've never heard of Initial D? I'm like,
Initial D is life. It is
so cool.
It's like religion to me. Like people are always like, what's your favorite anime? And I'm like, I can't suggest it to you unless you understand the love of cars,
Absolutely.
because you could show someone Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball and most people will understand why you like it, but Initial D, like any sports anime in general, you can't just show someone Slam Dunk or Eye Shield or Captain Tsubasa if they don't like football, basketball, soccer.
Fair enough.
It's kind of it's different, where you could show someone JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and if they appreciate drama and action, they'll get into it regardless if they like vampires or any of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. You're right about that. You have to the prerequisites are pretty intense. You have to be into cars, and you have to really like car culture to some level, I guess.
And I think that Initial D only got ported because it came out in 96, and I was watching it as it was coming out from these tape traders. But I felt that those DVDs would have never come out over here on this side of the world if Fast and the Furious didn't happen in the early 2000s. Fast and the Furious, the movies happened with Vin Diesel, and then all of a sudden car culture became hip. And then they're like, hey, there's this fucking anime, Initial D. Why don't we just like port it over? And it was the worst fucking dub ever. Like that.
It was terrible. It was such a hilarious.
You want to talk about bad dubs? That's probably the worst dub
bad.
ever. But like, you know, that's you know, people could say like, oh, One Piece had a horrible dub by 4Kids. No, motherfucker, you didn't see it. Initial D's dub is the worst fucking dub of all time.
It was atrocious. It was laughably bad.
They literally took like a Japanese anime, and they're like, let's turn it into this like westernized rap culture music video. Fucking. Yeah. Oh God, did they just destroy that anime? They changed the names of all the characters. There's like Takumi, that's too forward. We're gonna call him Tak. It's like, what? Tak? Call him Tom then or something. Like it's not even a normal name, you know? Like it was terrible. Weird. Oh fuck, I hate that. I bought all those DVDs just to support it, you know? I just like I wanted the company to know. I think it was Tokyo Pop was the company that was releasing. I just wanted to tell them, hey, there's fans out here, you know? But
Exactly. But Initial D is like, it's honestly, it's one of the things that I told myself when I was when I made the decision to travel to Japan and to live there and study there for a year. I said I have to go to Sega Joypolis in Tokyo just to drive in an Initial D car.
The big car. I think it's an RX-7 that they superimposed, and a '86 Corolla. It's two machines, right? I've seen pictures of it. I'd love
and Bunta's car, the Subaru.
Oh, the Subaru Impreza WRX.
Yes, exactly. So it's three of them, and they have three such Joypolises. There's one in Osaka, there's one in Tokyo, and I think there's also one in Yokohama, if I'm not mistaken. So
yes,
it's pretty awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's one day I want to go visit the mountains one day there. All the real mountains that everything was based on. But see, that's me. That's you know, like I do a little bit of racing on the side, and it's always like that was the anime for me. That was like, and it's totally unique to me because so many people ask me like, oh, you like that one? I'm like, yeah, but you might like it, but I might like it, but you know, you might not like it. So it's very unique to that. But that's pretty much anime for me in a nutshell. Like it's just I've always been, you know, part of that culture because of just the early days of geekdom. We all kind of overlaid into each other because it was so small back then that if you liked comic books and you liked anime and you liked Gundam kits and you liked Transformers, it was usually all in one store.
That's it. Exactly.
And it still, in a lot of ways, kind of still is. You know what I mean? The place that I go to get my Transformer comics is the still place I go to get my Gundam model kits, which is the still place that I used to go to get my anime. It was the place that I used to go to get my mangas. You know, it used to be all under one roof. You know,
awesome.
Which was Sci-Fi Anime. Plug.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Sci-Fi Anime was my first sponsor on Anime Deco, and there's actually a kit back there. There's a 1/100 Gundam Barbatos, and Lou Chan actually, he just gave it to me. He's like, this is your first assignment. Unbox this sucker and build it. Go. And I was just flabbergasted. He's just giving me a $60 kit, but you know, this is marketing now. People don't watch television anymore. There's no sense in taking out TV ads, newspaper ads. That stuff doesn't work anymore.
And not to mention the way that you know, with the advent of ad blocker and stuff, even a lot of these websites that, you know, they feel that, well, since no one's watching TV, we got to put ads on YouTube videos. But even then, it's still not getting to that market and that audience. It's sometimes the only way you can do it.
That's it. There's no more banner ads anymore because of ad block. There's no more YouTube ads at this point, except for on mobile, because now with ad block, you know, nobody sees them. So really, it's gone back old school. And word of mouth and all that stuff, and you know, conventions like yours. I feel like they made a huge comeback.
I find that social media is the ultimate tool. I think so. I think that I will always contribute the true success of my conventions more than anything is the social media power. To be able to, like, you know, one guy shares, you know, a link to my event, and then 3 guys share it, and 5 guys share it, and before you know it, that's why they call it the web. You know, it just goes outward.
That's it.
And I mean, that's the ultimate advertising now is just social media and
I agree. I agree. Absolutely. So I think I've taken up enough of your time for this evening. So honestly, thanks so much for accepting to do this stream with me. It's been so much fun having you on the show.
No problem, man. It's always fun.
Would you be down to do this on like a semi-regular-ish basis? Maybe not.
If I have free time, I do a lot of little podcasts here and there, but I always tell them you have to kind of catch me. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
If I usually on a Thursday, I might be at the gym. I might not, I mean, as we were talking right now, we're actually doing construction on our kitchen. So maybe if you re-listen to this, you might hear at some point banging of a hammer. It really just got to kind of message me and go, hey, you busy right now? You got an hour? You want to talk about robots and stuff?
Perfect. Okay, definitely, because I feel like we'll have a lot to talk about, and hopefully it'll help get more people to Retro Expo. So yeah, let me know what's going on with that, and I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, definitely. Well, I guess I could do a little bit of an announcement. The next Retro Expo will be in February of 2017.
February. Okay, cool.
Will be in February. I don't have an exact date yet, and the primary reason for that is like I have every Sunday in February blocked for the location, because I want to see what else might be happening in February. So nothing, I don't want to do the convention the same weekend as something else. So I want to make sure people are free for it. It's for the sake that way everyone could go. So, but it will be February 2017, the next Retro Expo. The date, I'll let people know. Won't be Valentine's Day weekend. I'll probably avoid that one. but aside from that one, yeah, for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome, Dan. Well, awesome. It was great having you, and I'm definitely gonna get in touch with you again. And sometime in the next few weeks, I'll send you like a little message and tell you, okay, these are the topics that we're gonna be discussing, and then it'd be great to have you back on the show. Thanks so much.
No problem.
And guys, thank you for watching. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/animedeco. And if you can support us on Patreon, even for $1 a month, that would be fantastic. I know these days we're not getting any revenue from YouTube ads. Nobody is. So that would be a great way to get into some giveaways, some contests. I've got some wonderful material planned. And so that would be really fantastic. It's patreon.com/animedeco. Thanks again for watching. As always, stay frosty.